Yeah, so Bomb Token, the community had started to build its very unique identity and these characteristics of curious, I think the word you used before, experimental,
Yep.
trying new things and not taking ourselves too seriously, but like wanting to do. So like created this really passionate. And so what I learned though, about 6 to 9 months in, I realize that although I am passionate about deflation, and I think it's something that somebody needs to crack this code. And if we had a deflationary stablecoin, it's still something I'm trying to crack to this code and I can't figure it out. But anyways, I realized that my bigger passion was the concept of what is the quickest and most efficient way of taking something from an idea to mainnet and then to innovation and beyond. So with Bomb Token, for example, I paid a person on Upwork $120. I created all the website and it created a multi-million dollar market cap within a month
Incredible.
or less. And this was in the bottom of the bear market. Now the token wasn't liquid, so we couldn't really use those assets to build it. But I did learn the power of like, wow, like I had an idea and it was a multi-million dollar thing. And I had no staff. There's no salaries. The cost is zero. And so I became obsessed with like, well, can we keep creating other cool things like this? Two, can we use this to help other projects get to market as quickly as possible? And so I just became, and this is my number one thing I'm obsessed with, whether through startups or through humans with the Humankind DAO. What is the quickest way you can go from an idea and inspiration to actually succeeding?
Welcome to Mission DeFi with Brad Nickel, where we explore projects in decentralized finance that are innovating and driving our mission of financial freedom forward. Thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, rate, and review Mission DeFi and spread the word by posting a tweet to the show. All opinions expressed by Brad Nickel or his guests are their opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Black Knox, Material Indicators, or any other affiliated organizations. You should not treat any opinion expressed by Brad Nickel or his guests as an inducement to make a particular investment, follow a particular strategy, or become involved with any project. A project being featured on the show is not an endorsement of that project in any way. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Now, here's Mission DeFi with Brad Nickel.
I am excited today to have with us Zachary Dash from BlockZero and Humankind DAO. And I'm excited about learning about both of these projects because I think that BlockZero is doing some really cool things in the space to build projects in DeFi. And the humankind concept is pretty cool. And Dash, as everybody calls him, has some really good backstory to how he ended up where he is. So Dash, thanks so much for joining us. Looking forward to kind of hearing what you guys are building and doing. And if you could kind of give us your background, your history, and then how you got into crypto piece of your life. And then we'll climb into what you guys are doing.
Awesome. Appreciate it. And thanks again for having me. A few of your other guests before me, I listened to them and those were awesome. So I highly encourage others listening in to go into the backlogs as well. Yeah, so for quick context, I moved to Austin, Texas 3 or 4 years ago with my wife. The goal here whenever I moved here was to get really integrated with the tech scene because I had one of the worst kind of physical networks possible. I've always struggled with that. And so ironically, or I guess not ironically, but unfortunately, no matter how much there is opportunity in Austin, Texas, I found all of my friends online. So all of my digital friends like you, I'm probably going to get closer with you throughout this interview than I do with a lot of physical meetups. I really have to force myself to go to those. But just before that, I've always been a creator at heart. That's kind of the one entrepreneur bug that I've never been able to get rid of. when I was 16 years old, I had this lime green Dell Inspiron laptop, and I downloaded something called FL Studios or Fruity Loop Studios. And it was my one way to really get out my creative expression in life. And so I started making music. And that was the very first time that I just started uploading things to YouTube during high school. And by the end of high school, it actually had gotten over 1 million video views. And that was really my first feeling of like, wow, I'm creating something in the world and it's making an impact, or at least it's getting out there. And so then I became obsessed with marketing. Okay, how do I amplify this? I need a logo, I need a website, I need to do X, Y, and Z. So the whole creation process. And then if you go from when I was 18 to when I was maybe 22, I probably attempted to create a dozen startups and like failed miserably on probably 10 of them or so. So I was just always just doing things in the background. Eventually I went to Texas A&M University. I graduated in sport management, which is always interesting for people who end up in crypto and they have these crazy, weird backgrounds. So I somehow studied sport management. When I graduated college, I still had that entrepreneur bug, but I got this 9-to-5 job and I was doing the 9-to-5 grind like a lot of people do. I actually came in my first job out of college, despite getting, college degree and everything. They tell you, I was running, and I really enjoyed it, but I was actually running little kids' birthday parties, and there were sports birthday parties.
So then you were using the degree.
Yeah, so they were cool, but it was my in at this sports complex that I really liked, and I wanted to move my way up. But anyways, for 4 years, what I would do is I'd work there 9 to 5, and then some weekends as well. And I would come home, I would take a nap, and then I would go to this business center at my apartment complex, and I would just work from 7 p.m. till 2 a.m. on anything that I was doing. And this was from like hiring people to create a mobile app for me on Upwork to like trying to create some, social media. It was everything in between. The one thing that did actually get off the ground a bit as I created and you might notice a parallel with Humankind later, but I created a social media network called Everkind. And the premise of it was a social media network for random acts of kindness. And I actually created it with my mother. The story of her is she would always, and we had this very small town in Texas, and she would run around the town doing random acts of kindness. And although she wanted to stay anonymous, she really wanted to see like, what is the impact that this had in the world after it. And so what we did is we created this social network, and we created this little card called an Everkind card. And you could leave it behind whenever you do a random act of kindness. It would send you to the website. If the person ever got that, they would go to the website and they could share their story. And so it actually, it was really fun. Wow. It actually became it was the biggest social network for random act of kindness at the time. And I did that with my mom for about 1.5 years. So I haven't even gotten to the rest of my crypto story, but I'll take a pause here and see if there's anything there that you want to break down.
There's a lot there. That's awesome. So I love kind of the, fail and learn thing. We all kind of, I think, go through that, but the Everkind just sounds like an amazing thing. Sounds like something we need right now. Maybe these exist in the world now and I just don't know about them, but I think that's really brilliant. I like the whole idea of people wanting to do more of the acts because of the feedback loop of people actually responding to what you did without you having to say, hey, I did this for you. I think that's a brilliant concept, man. I really love that.
Yeah, it was really funny. It was really fun. And I do agree with the premise of, natural human instincts. Whenever you see that you did something and the butterfly effect of what happened to that, it can really empower yourself to keep doing it more and more. And so you might have even seen during COVID, I think the guy from The Office who created like the good morning or like the good news show, I forget what he called it, but it went viral during COVID because during all this craziness and sadness and violence, there was this space where we could have good news in the world. And so I think whenever we get, wrapped up in Twitter and Facebook, we really wanted to, I think the tagline was the Center for Kindness on Earth is what we had come up with to like really give a safe spot for that. And that's really whenever I found the value of communities as well, which, came on. And
I'd love to, you may have to relaunch that.
Yeah, well, I think, which we'll talk about later, I think the Humankind is my extension of connecting my passion for people with my passion for technology. And how can you actually leverage crypto and blockchain and Web3 to amplify all the good in the world? So yeah, awesome. It's going to be a fun ride.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. I was curious about your musical YouTube channel.
Oh.
What were you creating?
I don't know if that's something I would like to publicly share. I had this era of, I really liked what you would call today is like lo-fi beats. It's like hip hop beats.
Yeah.
And basically, I guess it was called DJ Xerox, which I'm still a little embarrassed at the name I came up with. It was with a Z for my name, for Zach.
Oh,
And basically what I would do though is I would take popular songs, I would take the audio from them and then make my own beat underneath it and then release it into the world. So there's, you could see my journey of like dubstep to like random stuff, but it's all still there. Yeah.
oh, that's fun. Do you still do it every now and then?
When I'm in a really, really stressed mood, I will go to my Fruity Loop studio and do some sampled beats, but not as much as I used to.
That's great. That's really cool. I love your story till now. So you're from originally a small town in Texas. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty, it's the home place of the Texas flag. Yeah.
Really? What is that? North, southern Texas?
It's
I grew
north.
up in Texas and Oklahoma.
Oh,
So
oh, cool. It's
yeah.
north of Houston, north of the Woodlands. It's called Montgomery, Texas.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I know that area. A buddy of mine lives in Woodlands, so I've spent a little time there. I lived in Houston during the .com years. When my .com got acquired, the acquiring company moved us all to Houston, where that company was from. So
Oh, wow.
yeah. So
Yeah, I was in
anyway.
the Post Oak area. I was born. I was there until I was 10 or 11. So I was in the Post Oak area.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right. Okay. So Everkind, and then kind of what came next for you after that?
Yeah, so Everkind was 2015, and it was complete nonprofit. So weren't not really trying to make any money from it, but I always did have this bug. So this is now 3 years, 3 years into my 9 to 5 job. And I had the dream, I thought what was the dream job. I studied sport management. I liked sports. It was this supportive environment and a nice little family there. And I was moving my way up. I was, eventually I became the head of marketing and the head of events. And
Nice.
so I was succeeding. And yet I still felt like I was trapped is the best word I could describe it. And I couldn't really, I was kind of like, I felt guilty for a second. I'm like, I have everything I thought that I wanted, but I still felt trapped. And that's the only word I could use, because I didn't feel like I was doing my best work on the world. I don't feel like I was making my biggest impact. And so during those hours of 7 p.m. till 2 a.m., that's whenever I would like reset or recharge and like get my creative freedoms out. And, working your way up in a company is admirable type of work, right? And you can get, your paycheck at 3% in, raise every year, and you could keep going that way. But I really felt for me to have exponential impact on the earth and on the world while I'm here, I really needed to do that. One thing I did kind of miss on my story a bit, when I was 13, my father had passed away. And so that was always something. Yeah, it's. I got a lot more time with my dad than most kids do with their dad in that 13 years. But anyways, when he passed, I learned I had to contemplate early on how short life really is, and that you can't take it for granted. And so all of my decisions from there on was less about money and more about time. My dad never said he needed more money. Even my dad actually had not a lot of money at all, but he always just said he wished he had more time. And so to me, this value of time and money became so intertwined and so personal to me that by the time I was working this 9 to 5, I would go to the grocery store, and everything I would buy, I'd be like, all right, that's 30 minutes of my time. That's an hour and a half of my time.
Wow.
And so that's how kind of personal, and it's probably a little illogical and too extreme on that end. But I started to calculate that. And so I started to try to create a plan on like, what would it look like if I am going to get out of this feeling of trappedness? Like, what does that reality look like?
Right.
And I'd reverse engineer that I need to own my own thing. I need to create my own thing. I need to build my own thing. And so I actually put in 2017, I put in my 4 months notice, not 2 weeks. I put in my 4 months notice that I thought would give me that little push. I'm like, it's happening. You quit. Now you have 4 months to like make the most out of this. And also I wanted to give the company a good time to transition me out, because they were relying on me in a lot of ways. And so I'll take a pause here, but I think just alluding to one advice that you would give me is about ending stories midway to kind of keep the people involved.
Keep it going.
In the 4 months, after that 4 months, the same day that I quit my day job, I had proposed to my girlfriend at the time.
Oh,
so
wow.
that was the kind of crescendo moment of there.
Wait, you proposed at the end of the 4 months?
Yeah, so she had known that I had
Oh my
quit,
God.
but now I proposed to my girlfriend, who now knows that I am an unemployed entrepreneur
Wow.
going on my own journey.
And
Yeah.
she said yes anyway.
She said yes anyway. She's been my biggest support for sure.
That's phenomenal, man. And that's a gutsy move. But if you think about it, if you're about to be unemployed and you're willing to ask and somebody's willing to say yes, that's a really great, I don't want to use the word test, but it's just a really great, it gives a lot of credence to the relationship, right? And the value. That's awesome.
Yeah. And she's believed in me more than anybody else. And I will just mention, to maybe add so that I'm not too crazy, for 4 years, I had been saving up. And so I had built about 1 year's worth of savings at that point in time. So I'm one of the most risk averse people that you'll meet, which is crazy that I end up in crypto. But yeah, I wasn't just like completely, and I had a startup idea that I was working on. And I always have this feeling, is like, worst case scenario, I'll get another job. I'll get another job. And I feel like a lot of people don't look at that opportunity cost in there.
That's a great story. This is 2017. Had you gotten excited about crypto at that point?
I had maybe heard about it once or twice and completely dismissed it.
Right.
But at that point in time, I had never heard about crypto.
Okay. So how did you get to there?
I had decided I was going to try this startup, and it was going to be called Live Sports. And the basic idea was the ESPN of youth sports was like what I was going for. So I got in this white little Honda Civic, and I started driving around the entire country trying to pitch these facilities to like agree to join this thing. But long story short, after 3 or 4 months, I had worked my way all the way up to get a meeting at the Nike headquarters in Beaverton, Oregon. And it was going to be a make or break. Like, if they said yes, this was going to change my life. If they said no, I got to figure out what I'm going to do.
What were you asking them to do?
So my strategy was, I was going to go out to these sports complex. They're like multi-million-dollar sports facilities all over the US. I was going to get a letter of intent from them to sign with me as the exclusive streaming. And then I was going to leverage those letters of intent at the headquarters of Nike to be like, hey, can you sponsor this or maybe invest in this so I can then go buy the cameras and I can build out so that I was asking Nike, would you like to sponsor or invest? And then if you do, you will be sponsoring all of these sports complexes. That was the goal. I eventually got to that make or break moment in Beaverton, Oregon, and they said no. They're like, come back when you get more traction, pretty much. So I'm on my drive home.
Brutal.
My bank account is diminishing day by day. And I had to have that conversation with my wife, like, am I getting a job or am I trying to do this more? And now the wedding is 9 months away. And so now, the in-laws are probably like, not real sure, right? So she was like, what do you want to do? And I identified I really wanted to work remotely because I felt like that would give me freedom. And I wanted to work in the tech industry because I've always been a builder. So what I thought I was going to do is I said, I'm going to go to Starbucks every single day for 60 days and teach myself programming. And if by the end of the 60 days, if I haven't done something, I'm going to get a job. Like, that was kind of my thing. So 60 days during that programming, I learned about Ethereum during my research. And I was amazed on like, whoa, I can code something and it gets put onto this blockchain and I don't have to run a server. That's what intrigued me, is like, I don't have to run a server and figure out what a server is. Like, I'm sold. And that's weird, but that's actually what I was
That's
most
an
interested
interesting,
in.
Nobody has ever told me that was their hook to crypto, because actually managing and dealing with servers is a royal pain in the butt. So I can totally see how that could be a benefit, a feature.
Yeah, just publish it and let Ethereum take care of that. And so I didn't want to learn about all that stuff. So this was actually a shortcut for me. But in there, I
did
got
you during that process start going, oh, wait a minute, this is more than that, and I can really
So real quickly, I went down the rabbit hole of all the implications of Ethereum. Was really my portal. And so I became obsessed to where I joined all the Facebook groups. I hadn't actually gotten to Twitter at that point in time, but my real entry was I joined a bunch of Facebook groups and I started asking questions. I started answering questions whenever I did feel like I had anything, the answer. And then I eventually became a moderator of one of the biggest cryptocurrency Facebook groups out there. And that was my real rabbit hole experience of like, I want to work in crypto, whether I do my own thing or I want to work for somebody else. I want to be in this industry.
Nice. Very nice. And so you're building up a network in the industry because you're moderating this Facebook group and being active. So you're kind of running out of money. You're now down this rabbit hole of crypto and Ethereum. And do you have an idea right away, or did you just dive into something with somebody else? What happened?
Yeah, so it was still a good amount of savings, but for me, it made me really anxious. So I started to figure out, all right, I want to get a job in here. And it's always been about extend my runway so that I could take another shot. And that was always the concept.
I love
And
that.
so I just started reaching out to all the crypto projects I could and offering my services for free. So that was from video editing to the music stuff, to the logo, website, all the skills that I'd built up. What do you need? Let me just get my foot in the door. And about, 3 or 4 of them really were receptive, and I got a little involved. My first paid gig was actually for a company called ethos.io, which got acquired by Voyager, which is now a public, it's like Coinbase company. And so they let me write an article, and actually I wrote an article called Dear Mom, This is Cryptocurrency. And it was basically an explanation to like older people in general, like, how it works. And so that was one of their most successful articles. And it really gave me confidence. I'm like, hey, I can be in this industry and I can add value. And so I leveraged a lot of those relationships and met a lot of people. And then the real breakthrough came in 2018, early 2018. My buddy asked me, hey, do you want to come into this crypto marketing agency and use your skills to help us with X, Y, and Z? And so this was the first time I got like a real job and was able to, really dive in. I started off with just writing, but it was just for more context, it was a 33-person remote crypto marketing agency. And I think you've obviously been in the space a long time, but 2018 was the year of the deflation. The bubble was burst. It had burst and it was like slowly going down.
Yeah.
But there was still this hopium that every crypto project felt that they should be able to raise $50 million for like blockchain for bananas ideas.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of clients through the course of that year. I had seen 75 different crypto companies come through our doors, and we tried to help them from social media to PR to everything in between. So that was my real job. I eventually became the CMO of that marketing agency.
Wow.
And yeah, it was one thing I will just say about that. I would say that has less to do with my abilities and more to do with the industry that we're in. Anytime there's this new technology that's innovative, it really creates these gaps in employment where if you are under qualified, you can really get these opportunities if you're willing to work. So I would say I was pretty underqualified, but I had really wanted it. And so I got into that position and loved every bit of the creative aspect of it.
So there's 2 great things in that part of your story, and I think are valuable to people, because I talk to a lot of people that are like, well, how do I get into crypto? I've never dealt with crypto. I'm just learning about crypto. And I think there's 2 things there. The first thing is start offering to help projects, right? But that may not have funding yet, or trying to get off the ground. So you did that, and that built up some kind of skills and more of your network, and probably gave you something to show other people. And then, are you a good writer? Are you a good artist? Are you a good salesperson? Are you a good networker? Are you great at supporting end users and helping them through problems, right? I mean, there are so many gigs in this industry. You don't have to be a Solidity developer to get there, right? The other thing I think is an awesome lesson, and I've never heard it put the way you did, which is when a new tech hits, if you dive in and learn and understand that tech, and you're working in a segment of it for you, marketing agency, right? Then your ability to climb faster than you could in any other field is dramatically enhanced. And that's fantastic, because you're absolutely right. I look back at my career, I was always an early adopter of tech. And so I always had myself in kind of a position when I was working for other people to move up as rapidly as possible, because I was willing to dive in. Even during .com, because I wasn't a developer, but I understood developing and writing code and the tech and the underlying how the tech functioned, I was able to just kind of push my way forward because I had that knowledge. That's a fantastic lesson, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you. I think if for some reason it's a polarizing opinion to believe that you can offer your services for free. And we do live, a lot of people do believe never offer yourself but I think you have to look at the trade-off of what you're getting: experience, connections, network, and all that stuff. And if you don't have anybody giving you an offer, your market value is around zero, right? So I think I believe with that. And then the second, just to add to your second point there, yeah, I just mentioned this here so that people can understand the jump that you're talking about. I literally had 4x my salary that I was making in the sports complex world. Now, sports is, usually not the biggest moneymaker, and it was
Sure.
like use, but, and I think
4X
that
is pretty significant anyway.
it was really, and I think the other like little growth hack that I would suggest people is if you do work remotely and you do have a company that's based out of New York or San Francisco, their salary expectations are way higher than another one. So I was living in Texas in, the Woodlands that we talked about earlier, and it's very, very cheap living. So I was able to I looked at it as like saving money and again, filling up that piggy bank that I could go on the offense in the future. So I wanted to mention that. And then my last point here, it has never been easier with the creation of DAOs that if you work hard enough, previously, if you wanted to prove yourself in a company, there's a middleman that says, we'll have you or not. And then there's some like paperwork you got to do. And then sometimes you're a nuisance, like, okay, now I have to like hold your hand. But in DAOs, it's permissionless activity that you can add value and don't have to ask anybody. So this DAO ecosystem now has people can pop in, and if you are good, people will find you. And that's how we've hired all of our people. BlockZero has grown so much.
Well, and so there's a couple of good points there. First is when you talked about it's controversial that people don't think that you should work for nothing. You aren't working for nothing. You are working for connections and portfolio. And once you have that, especially in crypto, this meritocracy that you were talking about at the end here that happens in the DAO world is absolutely, it pays off. If you build some reputation and you build some portfolio, you can definitely leverage that into much more. The other thing about DAOs is if you put together, in a lot of them, you put together, you go to look at a Sushi or some of the big ones, you put together a proposal, it's clear, it's coherent, you build in milestones, you build in ways for people to see that you're actually getting the work done, and you build up the fact that you've done A, B, C, and D already. You can actually get funded and have a nice chunk of cash from doing a project for a project that you love, right? I interviewed Maki from Sushi. He talked about how people just proposed something and then suddenly now they're on the core team, right?
Yeah.
Because they proved through the meritocracy that crypto enables and the DAOs enable that they had worth to make something happen. And the cool thing is you can actually work for projects that you like. You don't have to go work for some company that you may or may not like, in some department you may or may not like, for some boss you may or may not like, right?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. I say this all the time. People who listen to this show are probably tired of me saying it, but I think we are transforming the very nature of work and eliminating the concept of jobs and the nature of organizations, of companies, and how they will function. And I think it's going to happen faster than most people believe. And I think it's a silver lining of COVID, right? This acceleration, and crypto, this acceleration of remote, this acceleration of I don't have to take the crappy job, it's all happening. Okay, so
but just to add to that, I think another aspect is you can work for multiple, which is another big thing. When usually you have like, all right, you got to work for our company, and it was almost like we don't want you working for anybody else. In BlockZero, we encourage people to do multiple things and to explore, and there is no competition, right? So I think it's the gig economy on steroids and automated. So I completely agree with that.
And you can make really good money, right? Yeah. You can make a lot more money than you were making in the day job. So I think that's great. So glad we covered that. That's awesome, man. That's really good. That's really good. So you've done all this. You worked for the projects, and then what happened next?
Yeah, so we'd seen about 75. I'm the CMO of the marketing agency at this point in time. I've seen about 75 different projects come through, and it really hit all my creative juices. But I realized that what I was missing was I wasn't able to. I was building the vision of other people's babies instead of my own baby, and so you can only have so much passion when it's somebody else's idea. And so at Christmas time of 2018, I left the crypto marketing agency, and I was like, I'm going to do my own thing. I had built up that piggy bank again of savings that I felt comfortable enough to do that. And at this point in time, I was married. So, we had during that time of working at the company, I was married. So probably felt good with the in-laws. I'm like, all right, he's employed for now until I jump off the cliff again.
Well, they had to appreciate that you had enough sense to save up for it. And I loved your personal runway for yourself, this kind of startup mentality of I need to have my burn rate and have my
Yeah.
runway and saved up. Instead of saying save for a year's salary, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
what am I going to burn here? What's my runway? That's great. Sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I'd calculated it all to a T for
Nice.
sure, and saved everywhere I could. But yeah, so I'm married at this point. It becomes Christmas time near 2018, and I realize I get that feeling again that I had back in this. I got to do something myself. I gotta jump, and so I quit, and then I think it was in the back of my brain, but I had this idea for a crypto project. And I went through a lot of thoughts on it. I think my biggest thing that I was worried about was like, I wanted to just learn and get something out into the world. I think a lot of people will take many, many, many years to like, they have an idea and then they go try to raise capital, whatever the routes are. And I've always been a fan of the lean startup approach, which is basically taking as little time and effort to energy to like get something to market and then learn and adapt. And
Right.
so I went to upwork.com. I hired a Solidity developer for $120 to code this token contract that had just a very unique adjustment in the Solidity code. And that code pretty much stated when this transaction or when somebody transfers this token, 1% of the transaction is destroyed. And if you hear that, you might be like, that sounds like, what's the purpose of that? The story, which we've talked about stories a lot, is the world's first deflationary currency. And we call it a self-destructing currency. So basically that was a story. It was called bomb token. So it had this extra bit of like polarizing what the heck is a bomb token and had this little emoji character. So it had a lot of things that like I got to build the story and I got to do my little thing. I got to have the website. It got to be my own little thing. And so I created the code. And now how do you actually get people to know about this? And I knew I didn't want to like make money on this. I just wanted to like build something of my own.
Right.
So this was actually the bottom of the bear market of 2019. Bitcoin was at 3,500. It was the bottom of the bottom.
Right.
And morale was at the all-time low on Reddit, on Facebook. Like everybody's like, it's never going to come back. So I went to Reddit, the cryptocurrency group. I was like, hey guys, I said, I think in the bottom of the bear market, I got bored and I'm launching this token. I'm giving it away for free. And so all you need to do is like sign up and like join these waves and you'll get these tokens. And so completely just gave away the tokens. I think this term now is called fair launch, wasn't really around there, but I just kind of like, gave it away. And I could go into more details with that, but long story short, it created this massive community that was really intrigued. Because in the bear market, everybody's just tired of losing money. It's like, oh, I got something for free, cool. And then they started to learn. To me, I didn't really share this much, but when I was little, I would collect these little quarters in a basketball piggy bank. And I've been obsessed with saving them and saving them and saving them. And then I realized later in life, though, I found my old $100 of quarters that I had. And through inflation, they were now worth like $51. I was like, that is crazy. Like $100, 51, I'd lost like half the value since I was growing up. So I've always like really, really disliked the inflation. And this was before all the stimulus stuff. So this was before it's hit the US economy. And so that resonated with a lot of people. Now, there are downsides to deflationary currencies as an economic monetary policy or economic outturn as well. But in terms of like what I love about crypto is it doesn't have to be the thing that runs the economy. It can be stores of value. We can attribute our own value to it. Right. And so it really just started to create my favorite part was like it questioned people's belief of what is money, what gives it value. And, you see now, I thought really negatively of Doge for the longest time, but like people value things to what that's their community. It represents community. And I think once I connected the dot on that, it really, it clicked in my brain. So anyways, January.
That's great.
Yeah. I'll take another pause there.
No,
yeah.
Go ahead. Keep going. Yeah. That's great.
So
wait, you know what? Let me ask. Yeah. So you started basically fair launching this token and giving it to everyone and people are engaging with you in a community. Were people like coming up with unique ways to use it, or were they like just sharing it with each other? How kind of what happened from there?
Yeah, so let me give a little detail. What we did is we created these different waves of depending on how early you signed up, and then once you go, so first Telegram was the home. So everybody was in Telegram and the chats were going crazy. And today we know, oh, we got to turn this into a DAO. But back then that wasn't like, there wasn't the technology to create into a DAO. So it was a lot of people. I think one thing that caught a lot of people off guard, but then it kind of became part of the DNA. A lot of other projects will come up with this huge roadmap and aspirations. And I was really tired of like, EOS, they raised $4 billion and then like, what are they going to do with it? And then it was the time that you could raise based like what I saw with the marketing agency, you could write a really nice looking white paper and roadmap and that would raise. And I got tired of like unmet expectations. So what I said, people are like, what's the roadmap? There's this little PNG image of a paper with nothing on it. Like, it was just like, there is no thing we're trying to do. All of the code is developed. We're not building anything. If somebody wants to, they can, but it was very clearly like, nothing else is going to be done. The currency is built. And so a lot of the energy revolved around probably people, the marketing side of like, do we want to run like, do we want to create t-shirts? Do we want to like, what do we want to do? So a lot of the community did. I will just say one of the breakouts of this communities of this was talking about tokenomics, which for the first time people were like another unique thing we did is we gave it 0 decimals. So if you sent one bomb, it gets destroyed. Like you lost your bomb.
Wow.
And yeah, like if you send 100.
Wait, so you would send a bomb, but somebody wouldn't actually get anything because
no, it wouldn't work. So like
burned.
some people would be like, our tokenomics are broken. I'm like, maybe, but this is what I did. So it created this natural curiosity of like, how do you create, like, what should we do? People then started thinking about, wait, what if somebody wraps the token? And now it's like, what happens with that? Does that break so there was all these questions that people were like thinking I'm going to like give them people want me to like protect this out. I'm like, that might be true. We'll see. And I think people rallied around this tokenomics and then experimenting. Do we need to upgrade the token? Do we not? And so there actually became this very intellectual crowd, like the co-creator of Occupy Wall Street. He joined in, he actually made a video with it and I was on an interview with it. And so like and I had a lot of actual hedge fund managers that were interested in this deflation thing. And it's funny, it's this little emoji bomb, we call him Bombino was the mascot. It had created all of this buzz and so that was it. And then that wasn't it, but over the next 9 months, there was probably over 100 copycats. If you actually go look in deflationary token, like there's actually a section on Etherscan right now called deflationary tokens because of this. And so people, you take a cool concept and then people just try to throw that into their tokenomics where it doesn't fit, or people straight up copied it and changed the decimals or whatever it was. And what was so interesting is all these copycats tried to really. And then that's what really solidified to me, community is the thing you can't replace.
That's the
value. You can't replace. It's not the code. People, they're going to steal it. It isn't the code. It was the community and the culture that couldn't be replaced. And so, yeah, I'll take a pause to see if you have any thoughts.
No, that's fantastic. And, I think the community, the ecosystem is figuring out that lesson that you learned, right, with Bomb Token, which is that it is all about the community. Anything can be forked and copy pasted and the whole bit. And ultimately it comes down to the community. It's funny. I'm deep into Olympus DAO and Ohm right now. And that community to me is pretty amazing. They just launched Olympus Pro so other projects could start using bonding instead of relying on liquidity mining. And that was built by the community while the founder Zeus was on vacation, right? And launched it, and now it's like blowing up. Yeah. But somebody in the group, somebody new into the group the other day said, well, yeah, but somebody's just going to copy this and fork it on BSC and Polygon or whatever. And somebody responded in the community and said, but they can't fork us, right? And that's ultimately, right, what the psychology of that project is, that the community is a critical component of it, that the people holding and the psychology of economics are at play in the entire functioning of that system. So it sounds like you got to learn that lesson early with your experiment, which I think is so cool. I love that idea. I love the idea of just going out there and playing with the tokenomics with 0 expectations, with just this blank slate to see what people do. That's brilliant.
Yeah, so it really did. And by the way, Olympus DAO is awesome. I think if I was smarter and I could have pushed it, like that's what like Bomb would have become, is like that. But
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, so
That
this
guy's super smart. Like,
yeah,
just
yeah.
brilliant. Anyway,
And,
go
and
ahead.
and just on the community side as well, I'm not sure, actually don't know you well enough to know this your views on like chains and if agnostic or Ethereum, but like I don't
I am
like
not. I am anti-maximalist.
okay. Yeah, I'm agnostic, but I will just say I think Ethereum's community is like why I'm sold on Ethereum. Winning, not even the tech, not even ETH 2.0, not
Makes
even proof of
sense.
staking. It's the community of the developers that I just think are amazing. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's the built-in competitive advantage now, right? That
yeah,
network effect of developers is the thing that everyone else is trying to
yeah,
buy, right, with
yeah.
incentives. So that's interesting.
Yeah, so Bomb Token, the community had started to build its very unique identity and these characteristics of curious, I think the word you used before, experimental,
Yep.
trying new things, and not taking ourselves too seriously, but like wanting to do. So like this created this really passionate. And so what I learned though, about 6 to 9 months in, I realize that although I am passionate about deflation, and I think it's something that somebody needs to crack this code, and if we had a deflationary stablecoin, it's still something I'm trying to crack to this code, and I can't figure it out. Anyways, I realized that my bigger passion was the concept of what is the quickest and most efficient way of taking something from an idea to mainnet and then to innovation and beyond. So with Bomb Token, for example, I paid a person on Upwork $120. I created all the website and it created a multi-million dollar market cap within a month
Incredible.
or less. And this was in the bottom of the bear market. Now the token wasn't liquid, so we couldn't really use those assets to build it. But I did learn the power of like, wow, like I had an idea and it was a multi-million dollar thing. And I had no staff. There's no staff. There's no salaries. The cost is zero. And so I became obsessed with like, well, what can we keep creating other cool things like this? Two, can we use this to help other projects get to market as quickly as possible? And so I just became, and this is my number one thing I'm obsessed with, whether through startups or through humans with the Humankind DAO. What is the quickest way you can go from an idea and inspiration to actually succeeding? And there's lots of loops. So like people like, oh, I got to build my team and I got to get the capital and I got to have connections. And there's so in the community like aspect, there's so many different things. And so 6 to 9 months in, I'd really had this concept of BlockZero Labs, which is what it is now. And the basic idea, the one core thing that stayed true with BlockZero Labs to this day is our mission is to launch ideas into the decentralized world. And so it really hit at that very early stage. Now, that's very ambiguous. So people needed kind of a little more, okay, what does that really mean? So
Right.
the one kind of like real world analogy we started giving was the Y-Combinator of the decentralized world. And so that, although it's not completely accurate to our entire vision, it was at least gave something people could gnaw on and connect with. So yeah,
Nice.
so yeah, go ahead.
So, okay. So I love it. So you guys you're doing this, you realize it's possible. It's like, okay, I can create things that have a lot of value and things that are unique and experimental, whatever words you want to use. So this was the inspiration for BlockZero.
Completely the inspiration, and also connecting that point earlier on the power of community. And so up until this point, a lot of accelerators and incubators and creations, it's really about capital and maybe connections to advisors. And we feel like there's kind of a missing link there is the community. What if from day one, you could launch a community? A lot of developers are amazing, but they don't necessarily like or enjoy the community building side. You know, they want to build. I just want to build. So we're like, well, what if we gave this, we start with the supply side, the community side, that other developers could leverage and build on top of, so that they would be able to, from day one, have this community that knows about them.
Nice.
And so what we did with BlockZero, we created another token called XIO token, and we again gave it away to the community, and we actually gave it to the bomb holders. So
I was about to say, did you bring in the bomb community?
Yes, everybody who held bomb is like, you're going to get XIO too. And we welcome you to come along this journey with me. I think you do like stories, so I want to take one pause here and give kind of a more kind of everything seems like positive and happy and but you obviously have setbacks in your entrepreneur journey. One of the things that I regret or wish I could have done differently is I did build Bomb Token, and then I had this other thing that I really wanted to do. And how do you take this community that's really reliant on you and your energy and your catalyst? And a lot of people got into Bomb Token, got into because they believed in me, whether through like interviews or whatever it is. They saw my vision. And now I have an alternative vision that I want to pursue. What does that do to the current community? Can they, there wasn't DAOs, remember? There wasn't like this system. So it's like at this point in time, I had controlled, pretty much the social medias, the website and stuff like that. So I think the transitional process of these could have been better, but the 80% of the community or 90% came 100% full on board BlockZero, and still to this day have that. I would say our core people, and we'll get into, we have 17 people working on BlockZero Labs on a day-to-day basis. Probably 5 to 10 of them were like in the bomb, like that's how far they've come along. But anyways, we create this token and we launch it, and our basic idea, YCombinator, the decentralized world. And the premise was, we do feel that giving away tokens is the growth hack to, and you see this with Uniswap, which they're doing it lazy, like that's what they just gave away the tokens. And you're like, wait, why are you giving them away? That means they're no value. It's like, no, if you create something of value in the world, people will give it a value. If I took a hammer and I dropped all over the world, hopefully nobody gets hit, but people are going to pick it up and be like, oh, I can do something with this and it's valuable, right? So the basic idea with XAO was like, let's create a token that other projects can deploy their tokens to our community. Because one of the biggest problems with doing airdrops, and we learned this with Bomb Token, is the concept of like being Sybil resistant. The concept of like, how do you keep people from gamifying this? Actually, Hart Lambert, from the CEO or the founder of UMA, made a tweet the other day. He thinks one of the biggest mistakes that people are thinking about doing is like doing retroactive airdrops, because it worked for Uniswap. There's probably some gamification. Like I actually got like 7 different drops because I used MetaMask way too much. But once you have this drop, and now once people are expecting it, they gamify it, the airdrop retroactive. They'll do a bunch of stuff, and so there's really only 2 ways to fix the Sybil resistant airdrop attack that I've identified, and one is KYC, which nobody wants to do, and I don't ever want to do. There's some cool things happening with like Bright ID and a bunch of other cool ones. It's like decentralized identity. But then the other one is money. You can't really gamify money. Capital is capital. So what we work with XAO is like, people would drop their tokens, their projects. We would drop tokens to our XAO holders proportional to their XAO holdings. Okay. So what this allowed us to do is, anytime we had an idea, we're going to drop it to you XAO holders. Anytime another project wants to launch of us, we're going to launch it to you XAO holders. And so that was the basic idea.
So the idea is that you would immediately get, one of the biggest problems with new projects is having enough people that are holding the tokens, right? Yeah. And so you have a built-in community of people who are already invested in the XIO token for BlockZero. And so they already kind of have an interest in BlockZero succeeding and the projects that BlockZero brings on succeeding. And so you'll drop to them proportionally. And so so from the community perspective, do you feel like you've probably retained most of the same people who are still members of the BlockZero community that came with you over? Are they still engaged and active with what you're doing?
Yeah, it's been amazing to see. I still get blown away when I look back in my relationships, how strong they've become over the years. So yeah, just to give some insight, we have a BlockZero council, which is, maybe to explain the BlockZero DAO.
Let's go through how it works.
The BlockZero DAO ecosystem is, there's 3 different kind of layers of the humans involved. At the widest layer, we call citizens. And that is a person who holds 100 XAO and they're a community member. And we have about 5,000 of those people that we've built up over the year. Then we have something called the core. And these are people that are working on BlockZero on a day-to-day basis from around the world. And on a consistent basis, they're contributors and get compensated for such from the DAO. And then we have this council, which was really put in place to add in some early guardrails to making sure things doesn't go crazy or haywire or anything like that. And that has currently 6 people right now. And 1, 2, 3, 4 of them were from the bomb token. So those people really stayed around. And so that's kind of the ecosystem, if that gives a little perspective.
Yeah. So when the other question I want to ask you was, when you launched this thing, did you launch BlockZero by yourself?
Oh yeah, I completely had forgotten to kind of give this. So one other hard part to do in crypto is building your first team of developers, right?
Right.
That around you. So I'm always trying to be scrappy, and I went to Upwork.com and I interviewed 42 different people on Upwork. I mean, it worked for Bomb Token; it's got to work for this. And there was only one person at the time that I really felt was young, or not, just hungry enough and motivated. A lot of people didn't really care what I was doing. And this person believed in what I was picturing so much that they decided to accept XAO tokens 100% for the compensation.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
so they were an agency in Pakistan of 4 very young, ambitious group. Today they have over 50 people, I believe. So
Nice.
they grew with us. And
Nice.
the whole time that we recently, we're in a new era with BlockZero, so we're not currently with them, but over 2 years they grew their team and they only accepted XAO tokens. So
Wow.
we didn't have any salaries or any like USD or anything like that.
That's amazing. That's a big leap. That's very cool.
Yeah, I would say I would encourage people to try to do that. If you're trying to bootstrapping is something I'm really passionate about, so that you're not just like wasting money. And it's very, very hard, but a lot of people will try to go to the biggest developers in the world to like do this. But if you can find somebody that's in a similar position of you in life, that's motivated and where you're at, and they want it just as bad as you are, even if they're not as experienced, I think is a great option.
That's great. That's really cool. But it was still kind of you driving the vision. Let's do this. Let me launch this. I've got this partner developer team that's doing this. Did you have an initial project you wanted to launch beyond kind of the community, or was it like, let's open our doors and see what comes in?
Yeah, so what we did is the one thing that we explained to people was the YCombinator of the decentralized world. And so what we did is we opened up applications like you would a YCombinator to have our first batch of startups.
Right.
And so we had about 50, 60 different applicants. And, most of them, to be honest, they weren't to the level that we were hoping to have. But there were 2 projects at the time that wanted to come through. It was really a pilot of like testing are we capable of doing this? And so with YCombinator, the model is very clear. You get a certain amount of they take equity. We were taking tokens for this. So the tokens would be dropped to us and we would get a percentage of those for XAO. You get advisory with that. And so we were trying to add advisor with our community. And so we were trying to replicate the YC model in cryptos native. And we did a pilot over a month with 2 projects at the time. And we learned a whole lot. I think the one thing we took away at the time was, at the end of that, was how unscalable it felt like. And this is something I didn't realize until actually maybe 3 months ago. It really clicked with me. We were trying to create the YCombinator of the decentralized world, but what we are creating is a decentralized YCombinator. And that sounds just like a change of words, but it really shifts your train of thinking of like, don't recreate what Web 2 is already doing and try to fit it into Web 3. What are the special powers that Web 3 gives us that was not possible in Web 2, and adapt a new way to think about accelerating projects? And so that's kind of the 2022 vision of BlockZero, is to create that ecosystem. But hopefully that gives some context. In the early days, we were completely focused on trying to help these other projects and taking a percentage of their tokens. That's what happened in the first probably 3 or 4 months.
Okay, cool. And so how many projects have you launched with BlockZero? And it sounds almost kind of like you are doing a reboot, like right now, of how this thing's going to work to kind of relaunch the whole thing. Not relaunch, it's still there. Yeah. You're still doing projects, but is that right?
Well, yeah, just because to be transparent, we're trying. One of the good things about having a DAO and a community is like who decides what the vision is. Who decides what the roadmap is? Like, I can share my views on where we should go, but in a DAO, which BlockZero operates as, it can become, I'll call it like narrative or optics debt, where, you have code debt, but what we call it is like what we're trying to get to is like, we've been experimenting with a bunch of different stuff, which I'll go into, but sooner or later, you have to have one common vision that unites everybody. And here's who we are. Here's what we're building. Here's why we're building it. And so I feel like within the last few months, we've really, really got that clarity. But just to give some context on what we had to go through to get to this point.
I was about that.
So we were trying to accelerate projects. And then the goal was, let's create this technology, the smart contract that allows people to stake XAO tokens. And then a portion of the XAO yield or interest will go to support the startups. So instead, think of it like I stake the startup that I want to support, right, and then they're going to get funding through the XAO token through inflation. And then we're going to get back some tokens in return. So we called it a risk mitigated like crowdfunding. So typically in crowdfunding, you have to give up your money. If you invest, you have to give up like if you were to invest in an ICO, you have to give up 10 ETH to participate.
Right.
But what we wanted to do is, what if you could just lock up money, right, and have zero downside other than risk of price volatility for sure. But what if you can notice a trend here. I really like risk aversion and giving things away for free, right? And I'm super all that.
That's awesome.
So the goal, so we were trying to build this technology where you lock up XAO into a startup you want to support. They get funding, we learn about them, we get their token, and that's another way of building Web3 into an accelerator instead of the other way. But actually what came of it, and we still do want to build, that's actually what we still do want to build. But what came of this building is this really unique specific term called flash staking. And it inspired its own project. So we started to realize we've got all these developers, we've got these communities, and we discovered this term that the community just like fell in love with. Talking about like you were talking about Olympus, and they like the community just learned this Olympus Pro thing. I was reading about that tweet thread actually last night. It's nice. It's still blowing. We actually want to implement it, so I'm like, I gotta figure it out. But through the community is like, I know you're building this, but we think this is really cool. And if you don't have the community, you can't identify that. But luckily, our community is like, they will tell you really early, don't do this, do this. And so this term called flash staking, basically the problem that we came through with the building of the crowdfunding thing was, if I staked $100,000 to support somebody, the startup is just getting little bits of funding over time, which is it's good. It protects the risk. But what if that startup needs upfront capital to do an audit or to do something? So we came up with this idea, what if you locked money and then you could choose an amount of time that you want to lock up the money, and the yield, instead of the startup having to wait for that yield, it would get paid upfront and in whole. So for example, what if I could lock up for 6 months? I will commit to locking up 6 months, and then the startup would get 6 months worth of yield on day one.
You're getting an advance on your yield. It's kind of like the Alchemix model, but probably less conservative in terms of yield.
Yeah, the Alchemix is a huge inspiration. And
that's brilliant, though, for funding. That's a great idea, man.
Yeah, so we actually took that concept and we built a project around it called Flash Stake, which I don't think we talked about in the pre-chat. But Flash Stake, so flashstake.io is what we launched on New Year's Day of this year, and we called it the time travel of money. And it has a bunch of Back to the Future movie style themes to it. Had a little Flashtronaut thing, and so we launched it on New Year's Day. To my memory, it is the first like time-based protocol. There's a bunch now. There's like Alchemix. I think Pendle is doing this really cool thing. There's a bunch of different people, but we did that on New Year's Day of this year, and we launched it. And the basic idea, so here's kind of an interesting strategy we took. We could have tried to implement that into the XAO token, this flash stakiness, but we wanted to mitigate the risk of if it goes wrong or if it doesn't. It's experimental.
Doesn't take down the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, so we separated out into another project called Flash, the Flash token. And that was the purpose of it. And so basically people could take this Flash token, you could stake it, and you would immediately get back your choice of DAI, ETH, whatever it is. And so we got a bunch of community with tons of momentum going into New Year's. I will just mention for anybody else listening, do not do launches on Christmas or New Year's Day, because these people building have families, I didn't care. Like, I was all in, but these other people, you got to protect them. Yeah. So we launched on New Year's Day, and within the first month, it got over 10 million TVL, which was just great to see. The crazier stat to me was the duration that people were staking. people were staking, you could stake 500 days if you wanted.
Wow.
You didn't have to. You could stake 2 days if you wanted. But the reason that you would do 500 days is you would want more interest up front.
Right.
So people were staking in terms of what we call total flash time. There was 93 years worth of time that people had like staked.
Wow, that's amazing.
So like if you lack them all up. So I think I'm getting ahead of myself, but I'll take a pause to see if you have any questions on
Yeah,
Flash.
because I really conceptually want to get into, wow. And by the way, let me know if you run out of time, but I'm good until I have to run my daughter to physical therapy. So, okay. So Flash stake, I'm an XIO holder and I get an airdrop of Flash. Is that
proportional to your XO holdings? Yeah.
And if I want to, I could go buy Flash on Uniswap as well if I want to be more involved and engaged and stake more. I can Flash stake my Flash, and then now in the concept as it relates to Block, is this a tie-in to BlockZero, or is this just a scenario where you guys created Flash stake as a mechanism so people could take funds and offer them to potential new projects that come into BlockZero? Or is there like a connection? Like, if I'm in Flash stake, am I saying, hey, I want to stake these for startup X or project X, and so that money goes straight to project X that comes in the advance? How does that function?
Yeah, so what I would say is Flash, the protocol itself is meant to be very kind of like Ethereum. We just want to create the ability to get instant upfront yield. And then the things that you can build on top of that could be for startups, could be for a lot of different things.
Okay.
I'll give an example of like one thing we call transferless payments. So what if instead of you owe a friend $10, instead of actually sending them $10, you could lock up Flash for a certain amount of time and they get paid and you keep your Flash. In theory, there was no transfer that happened, but that was an example. But this crowdfunding part, that could be built on top of Flash. So all of those things have not been built on top of, but we want them to be, and that is the bigger picture vision.
Wow, there's so much potential there. That's fantastic. I love the protocol. I love the mechanism. I'm all about, what are the Legos that you're building and how can that be applied? And then I also see this, one of the primary reasons that I'm an investor in Alchemix is I think they are one of the first, they have the potential to be one of the first big moves into the real world, right? I see that project as having that kind of potential. So I see Flash stake in my head. I'm thinking, okay, there's a project that not only can be integrated with all kinds of DeFi strategies, but actually has the potential, like you were just talking about, you want to pay a friend some money to leverage off of. That's very cool. That's very cool. And I can see a lot of other projects making use of the protocol as well.
Yeah, so we're in the process, just to fast forward, we are in the process right now of creating Flash Stake V3 because we realize, just like all experimental things, this can be made better. And so one of the biggest issues with Flash, we're constantly struggling with liquidity, and I guess Olympus could help with this, but like we're constantly having to use the Flash token to do liquidity mining to get the Flash. Because if you have instant upfront yield and it's paid in something like Flash, you have to be able to sell it to be able to get use out of it. So we're building V3 right now, which fixes a lot of or upgrades a lot of the things that we were running into with that. And so we're trying to get that out in Q4 or early next year right now.
Is the collateralization, what did you say, it's 100% of your future yield? That's what you get out of it?
So are you talking about like if you stake, like what you can get back?
Like if I stake 100 Flash, right? Am I able to get 100% of whatever the future yield of that is based on staking it? Do I get 100% of that, or am I getting like 50% of that, and 50% is kept in the protocol and see where it all ends up?
Yeah. So how Flash V2 works is there is an FPY, which is the interest rate, and then so if the interest rate is 100%, that means you could stake up to a year. So
the time based. Okay.
The variable is what you can't go beyond. There is a max number of days that you can hit to where, because you don't want to get it to where people can stake it and then there's a perpetual loop of people gamifying the system. So there is a cap at the number of days that you can stake. That's
still cool. That's great. Okay, so if I stake and my future yield out 100 days is X, then I can immediately take that because I know I'm going to get it, and I'm getting this in any token I want based on the current value of Flash, right? So I can get it in DAI, or not any token, I assume, but whatever the system has available. So I can, if it's going to be worth in 100 days, it's based on today's price, it's going to be worth $5,000, I can get 5,000 USDC or whatever, and then utilize it for whatever I want.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of the people are calling this lending. We're actually not thinking of it lending because you don't have to pay anything back.
Right.
So this is a different way of thinking about it. So, but at a high level, the only asterisk I'll mention, just because just on time, I'm not sure how much time we have, is what we're doing with V3 is now when you flash stake, you will actually be flash staking an LP position. And that's how we fix the liquid. So actually, while you're staking, you're also earning LP fees as well. So there's some things that we're doing with V3, which maybe we can talk about.
No, that's very cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I love this concept, and I love concepts like this that I can see a ton of utilization for elsewhere. That's great. That's great. So you've got this plot project. Is this officially a BlockZero project, or is this like just a project that came out of the group and it's just there?
Sorry, did you say humankind? Is that what you're referring to? Or?
No, I said flash stake. Is that like a project that is a BlockZero project?
Through and through. So there's two different. The best way to think about BlockZero, we create our own projects and then we accelerate other people's projects. So
cool.
Accelerator and venture studio would be the other term. So flash stake through and through is a BlockZero project. The BlockZero XAO holders and community controls the upgradability of the contract. Okay. So for example, what we can have set in there is every single time that Flash is minted, BlockZero Labs takes 0.5%.
Nice.
We did this we launched another protocol 2 weeks ago called Aquify.io. And every single time Aquify is minted, a percentage goes to the BlockZero Council. So that's kind of the structure, is if these protocols succeed, BlockZero Labs will gain in its treasury.
Nice. And so people that have XIO are also getting a piece of those projects. So it enhances the value of XIO. It enhances their own personal value because they have a piece of it. That's awesome.
Yeah, they actually get 100. By the way, just to mention, it's not like we're giving a little amount of tokens to these people. They're getting like all the tokens. We don't do any funding or any outside capital raise or reserve any for VCs. It's like, here you go, XAO holders. That's all you get.
Wow. And then if a project is coming to you to be incubated, does the project retain some of their tokens when they come in? And kind of what's the project? You've built this community of, sounds like advisors and developers, and you've got graphic artists and marketing people. Are those all people that are helping these projects that are coming into BlockZero because they're holders and they have a vested interest in it? Is there a way that the projects are coming in, are retaining some of their tokens and then actually paying people for some of these things? How does that all function?
Yeah, it's something we're still trying to make sure is as efficient as possible. So there's two different ways to. So I think actually using the humankind DAO that would actually be a good analogy here.
Okay, go ahead. That's fine.
So I created this idea called the humankind DAO, which we can go into the story, but just for the technical details of how it's related to BlockZero, right. I am proposing that to BlockZero. Here's my idea. Here's my vision. Here's how many kind tokens, which is the token of humankind, that I'm willing to give to BlockZero citizens. Here is my resources that I need from you. And I made a proposal. And now the XAO holders can either decide that's way too little tokens, we're not going to accept it, or we don't like this vision, we're not going to accept it, or this is amazing. And then if this is actually really interesting because this is happening in this week, is BlockZero Labs Council and community will either accept my proposal, which is kind of ironic because like obviously I created BlockZero Labs, but I'm going through the process of everybody else. Here's what you need to do. It'll show people how to make it. And actually that's a lot of the inspiration behind doing this. I want to see other people like you yourself. Anybody can create, just like you saw in sushi, like anybody can do whatever they want. So I'm proposing it. If it gets accepted, I'm going to be getting the resources that I need, which I identified. I need a front-end developer. I need a Solidity developer. I need a partnerships person. I need a marketing lead. I need a security audit. And BlockZero is going to take care of all that for me. And I'm going to get the community and support. And so that's the trade-off. And then BlockZero is now responsible for providing what they promised to do.
That's a very cool model. And the community has these skill sets, the Solidity developers, the whatever, and I assume they hire an auditing firm for audits. Is that all kind of skill sets that you guys have in the community?
Yeah, definitely. We're always want more. I think like every community in crypto is really scrounging for resources. But yeah, we've got 5 developers, a few marketing people. So
Nice.
so in our core, these are the people we call like our skeleton contributors, that's a skeleton team kind of thing. And then we're always constantly leveraging the power of crowdsourcing. So for example, if you needed a logo, maybe you didn't want to use our designer, but you wanted to create a competition for our community to create a logo for you, you can launch that. And now the community is helping you create it.
Oh, very cool. This is a really, and I like this. I like how this model has evolved, and I like the way it works. I think it's going to be interesting as you grow this and get more attention for the projects you're launching, how many more pile into the BlockZero community to be part of it, right? And this actually addresses, I mean, if you really think about it, the first part of this conversation, we talked about people volunteering their time and,
Yep.
I mean, you've created a monetization model for that, right? And people can partake and participate and have a not vested interest, but an interest in the projects that are coming in.
Yeah. And maybe just to try to add value to any listeners out there talking about something just outside of BlockZero, but that we're dealing with, transitioning to a DAO is difficult because some people want all right, there's a leader, some people want to know who's responsible and they can point and they want to say, I know who's accountable and you're accountable to me and I don't have to do anything. And some people really like that traditional hierarchy.
Yeah.
And it's going to really filter off a lot of people who don't want to do anything, who
Right.
don't add a lot of value. They just want to complain. And that's fine. I think that's natural humans. But I just want to mention the DAO. If you're thinking about creating a DAO to do less work, that's not going to happen. You create a DAO. I work twice as much as I did before.
That's a great line. I'm going to so quote that line. That's awesome.
Don't do it. Yeah, I would run the opposite way because now you are cultivating that in people and feeling empowered to step up is so hard, especially because we didn't start that way. I think it's a little better for people that start day 1, 100%.
They know going in. Yeah.
But our community had to be like, wait, you did all this before. Now I have to do something if I want it to happen. And we still have this people that are pushing it forward, but it's a transition. So the DAO model, I believe it's harder to get off the ground, and we're noticing that now. And I actually think BlockZero could be further along right now if we didn't DAOify it. But I'm a huge believer we can go way farther now
if you do it.
And that network effect of every new project that comes on is going to join our community. Our community is going to learn about project. I think the flywheel of that is exponential. When it's centralized, there's just so far that you could take that.
Totally agree with you. And I think it's a smart move to bite the bullet and have a little bit of growing pain now and probably some attrition in your community, because ultimately the model to me is much stronger. I think that makes total sense. In terms of the actual functionality of the DAO voting, that kind of thing, are you using tools that exist already out there to manage and let people engage and post proposals? How are you doing all that?
Yeah, so one of the defaults is snapshot.org. I'm sure you're familiar with, where that's what was like day one. All right, we got to at least get something for so to give us a sentiment check on what they want to have happen. We are now anxiously waiting at the door for boardroom. So I had a call the other week. Somebody from Shape, Willy Wonka he goes by Willy Wonka. His name is Willy. We got the time to just sit with him and say, because Shapeshift, you remember, they started a centralized company and they completely dissolved all of that. So we just got to pick his brain for like 3 hours.
Nice.
How do you do that? And so he gave us all the little DAO, like their entire stack of the flow. This is a whole nother conversation, but how do you get the contributors and like who decides this and where do you do this? That's it. This is a whole nother episode maybe we have. But at the base level, it's good to start with a snapshot. It's pretty easy to set up. If you can create a boardroom is a great thing. And then on the back, another just like getting your feet wet in DAO, create a multi-sig through Gnosis or something else where there's no single person controlling it. And then what we're in the process now is connecting Snapshot to the multi-sig so that literal voting on Snapshot gets executed on chain.
Nice. That's great. That's fantastic. Okay. So I'm really excited to learn exactly kind of what you guys are doing. And I love that you're so open book about what you've not struggled with, but the things you've learned to do this, to make it better. Right. And so I think that's amazing, and it's actually got me excited about trying to get involved with what you're doing. I think it's really powerful. I
Mhm.
really want to talk about humankind, right? So what you're trying to build with that. But first, is there more that we should know kind of about? I'm sure there's 100 more things that we should know about BlockZero, but kind of on an overview in this episode, maybe we can do another episode and climb into
Yeah.
more of the details.
Well, that's what I was going to say is maybe we actually, I know stopping stories midway. I would be happy with maybe pushing humankind to
Let's
another
do it.
episode, or maybe we don't even do, but I think
No, I'd
it's
love to
still
do an
early.
episode on
Just
humankind.
just the one quick thing, if anyone wants to go to humankind.io, that's where you can I would
Cool.
actually like to not give context and see how people analyze what that's about.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so maybe in another episode we could dive, but for Block Zero specifically, I guess the one thing that I would, in fostering community and incentivizing it, it took a long time to, one of the hardest things, you join a DAO, and I like, your perspective too. It's great that there's freedom and open-endedness, but it's also very intimidating. Where do you start? What do you do? And so what we did to try to jumpstart this is we created something called the Block Zero Moon Mission. And basically what happens is when you join Block Zero, there are these 4 different categories of tasks that you can do to start to level up your way within Block Zero. And so
Ah,
we identified the 4 main things that we need for Block Zero to succeed, from liquidity to mental mining is this other aspect, which we really didn't get into. We use your brain and problem solving ability to do things, to joining the
huh.
core. So you actually have mental mining is a really fun conversation if you ever want to go on. And then there's a 4th one right now that helping us recruit new citizens. Can you get your friends involved? So anyways, if you go to blockzerolabs.io/moon, it like is the way that you can kind of jump in and get your feet
Nice.
wet. And we're thinking about even making small little cohorts. So instead of just, even like, I think there's something really valuable about getting people in smaller groups together. Like if
Right.
you ever did like college freshman camp, like they put you in a small group so you would build those relationships. And so that's what we're trying to do with that. So I just wanted to give some insight for other DAOs out there. It's great that you're open-ended, but how are you going to foster and encourage people to step up and give them a path? Because a lot of people still don't know where to get going.
I think that's brilliant. I think what's happening a lot now is people jump into a Discord server and they're usually overwhelmed by everything that's there. And there's a start here group, and there's all these different places you can provide your services to, et cetera. I think it's really smart to begin the engagement and the investment of energy and mind and time and money and networking to this is a really brilliant idea. I hope you'll publish something about this, because I think that this can be incredibly valuable across the ecosystem to give people something to do. I feel horrible. I'm going to fill it in later. There's a guy on Twitter that has almost like a venture studio in the Web 2 world, as well as he's doing some, but he publishes a lot about building community, and it'll come to me and I'll insert it here somewhere. And one of the things he talks about a lot is you have to tell people what you need, and you have to get them engaged in actually doing tasks that they already feel comfortable with. And that gets them to be a part of that community, because otherwise, if you don't, they're just observers of everybody talking about how great the token is. And they're never going to actually become what you need them to become to succeed as a DAO.
Mhm.
So I think that's a really brilliant step you guys have taken to, like, hey, here are the things you can do right now to get engaged and involved.
Yeah. And I completely agree with you. I feel that simple call to action, we can really overlook it because we assume that the people know what to do, but they're just coming into, like, here's one small thing that we did for our Discord. We had so many channels. Imagine Block Zero Labs, and then all of our projects have channels. And
Oh God.
so what we did is, if you go to the Block Zero Discord, this is a small thing, but it can go a long way. And I was actually inspired by the Solana Discord when I was like just looking in there. But when you join, all of the channels by default are hidden. And
Ah,
you have to click an emoji for it to be shown, and you opt into what you want to do. So if you join the Block Zero Discord, it's like, what are you here for? I want to earn yield. I want to follow a project. I want to ask a question, whatever it is. And that's just like a small thing, but it's actually education through onboarding, if that makes
nice.
sense, where it's like,
Yeah.
you're not just like, all right, here you go, and then you need to learn information, but actually going through the process and combining those two. And I will just mention, I would love to publish research on what we've learned. I feel like we still haven't figured out the moon mission entirely, but as soon as we get some data, we literally launched a month ago. As soon as we get some data on it, I'd love to make a report around that.
It's so exciting to be having this conversation with you while you guys are going through kind of launching the other pieces of it that you've learned from the past experiences. I think that's fascinating. I really actually I almost kind of want to keep this to being a serial interview with you and just dive into everything you're experiencing as you go through this, because I think this is amazing, really amazing. Wow. Okay. Yeah, let's do a humankind episode, maybe in a week or two. And in the meantime, if people want to come, right? Oh, let me ask the question I ask everybody. First, let me ask you, is there anything else you want to make sure we get out and let people know about BlockZero before?
I would say if you are listening, you're like, well, how do I get started? You go to blockzerolabs.io and you click become a citizen. And that's how that'll onboard you into everything.
Nice. Beautiful. Simple, clean, obvious. That's good. Not usually the case with DeFi projects. I ask this question of everybody. And so what the question is, because you've listened to a couple of episodes, but who are projects or people in the space that you think are inspirational or important and critical to kind of moving the entire DeFi crypto ecosystem forward, or people that you have this incredible level of respect for what they're doing or how they operate?
Yeah, I actually was not prepared for this, but I think the best speakers are on the spot. So just a quick side note, as I'm what my brain is going through right now, I'm creating a Twitter thread right now called 33 Contrarian Crypto Views. And I'm reaching out to people to ask, what is something you believe that most of the people in crypto don't believe? And so I guess what I'm saying is the people I reached out to, those are the people I really respect. So I'm going through that list of like who I reached out. One person that I wish I knew better that I'm actually not connected with, but he's just been around for the longest time, is Eric Voorhees from Shapeshift. And he has a lot of, libertarian views and about I feel like he's a very principled person.
Completely.
That I really respect that about him. I think Hayden Adams' story of like taking something like from like Vitalik had like being inspired actually to go and build something. I love that as well. So there's so many people in crypto that I think are doing amazing work, but just off the top of my head, those are two people that really inspire me.
Those are two people that I have incredible respect for. It's funny, people like Eric Voorhees and a few. I'm not a full-on libertarian, right? I mean, I have some very strong libertarian leanings, but I'm also very centrist in a lot of ways. But the thing I respected most in the crypto community were the libertarians that I saw that no matter the topic or the people involved, they stood by those principles. And Eric was one of those people, right? So whether it comes to drug law enforcement, Black Lives Matter, police, and what needs to happen if you believe that the police are a problem, whatever it is, there was always that consistency. And that is absolutely something I have a huge amount of respect for. The other thing from Eric is what we talked about earlier, which is taking this incredible money machine that he had for years. And first of all, because the attorney said, dude, you got to start doing KYC, just biting the bullet and doing it. And I'm sure the revenue dropped off a cliff. But then saying, you know what? Not only am I going to make this a part of the ecosystem as a DAO, but I'm also going to let anybody else do it, right? I'm going to open source the code. My entire business can be copied if somebody wants to, because I want to contribute to this ecosystem. So I think that's an awesome selection. I think that, and I never have placed myself in the position of answering this question, which I should have. But I think that Eric is a great one, and I think definitely Hayden Adams is a great example of just taking a concept and running with it and having kind of a real community-oriented attitude about what was going to happen next, right? And just driving forward and letting go.
I think just looking at the obvious thing that Vitalik, I didn't even mention Vitalik. I just feel like he's like default.
Exactly.
But he would, of course, be at the top of the list somewhere with those other people. But I think one thing with Vitalik, people think of community builders as like, public and extroverted, but Vitalik had this way of inspiring people to build And if you ever like threw shade at him on Twitter or was like, he just took it and was just like he doesn't get into that drama on Twitter. And
Yeah.
that's one thing I previously would struggle with personally. So that's good. And I do agree with you about like Eric Voorhees, just like consistency to what they say they believe to what they actually do.
Yeah, it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. How should people connect with you personally, say on Twitter? What's
Zachary Dash on Twitter, and pretty much that's me on every social, ZACH. And yeah, that's it.
All right, man. I am so excited to have this interview. I'm actually really excited for what you're doing at BlockZero. Thanks so much for coming on, and thanks for your time. We'll get you back on for Humankind, as well as I think we should dive deeper and follow up on how things go with everything.
Yeah, appreciate it. I hope you have a good week.